Overwatch 2 recently became the worst rated game on Steam. Although most of the reviews are from China, a country without access to Overwatch 2 since Blizzard chose not to renew their contract with NetEase, the company who published Blizzard games in China, that still leaves a decent amount of players who despise the game. But instead of just ranting about how much better Overwatch was back in the good old days, or joining on the bandwagon with a meme review, I instead wanted to look at why people hate on Overwatch 2 and what I would do to fix it. First, let's just take a step back for a quick history for the series for people that don't know. When Overwatch 1 was released back in 2016, I was one of the people who pre-ordered the Origins edition of the game for $40. Back then, the game was promised as a pay once, play forever multiplayer shooter by Aaron Keller, the assistant game director. Keller said that the reason we ended up going that way was that it's so important to have access to every hero in the game, and in the middle of the match to swap to any other hero they think is necessary. And for years, that was true. Every new hero was free, every new map was free, the main microtransactions were via loot boxes, and the biggest controversy was showing off Tracer's butt in a victory pose. Once Overwatch 2 was announced at BlizzCon 2019, fans were stoked after Blizzard confirmed that the game would have a shared multiplayer environment with the original Overwatch. All the new heroes, maps, and PvP modes were to be added to both versions, with the main selling point to Overwatch 2 being an upgraded game engine, character visual overhauls, and a PvE mode with features like talent trees. Consistent updates for Overwatch were put on hold as the team was hard at work developing Overwatch 2. But then, the issues slowly trickled in. Overwatch 2 was announced to be free to play in a live service model, meaning that the Overwatch 1 servers would be shut down and replaced with Overwatch 2 servers. The game was delayed, and the game director, Jeff Kaplan, stepped down and was replaced by Keller. The game was finally released on October 4th of 2022 as an early access release. With the release of Season 6 a little over 2 weeks ago, Overwatch 2 has finally dropped the early access label and has released on Steam. So why do fans hate it so much? Well, remember Keller's earlier quote about how it's important to have access to every hero in the game? With the release of Overwatch 2 also came the decision to replace the loot boxes with a battle pass. This was frowned upon for two reasons. First, loot boxes were useful since you always had a chance to get any specific item that you wanted. Here, you already know exactly what you're going to get at each level, so if you really want to watch Widowmaker play with a spider, you have to wait until you grind out to level 79. Likewise, if there's no cosmetics you like on the battle pass, you don't have much incentive to play that season. The second and arguably more important reason people dislike the battle pass is because new heroes were now tied to it. If you want Alari, the brand new hero released in Season 6, you can either grind out to level 45 in the battle pass, or you can buy the battle pass for $10 to immediately unlock her. Overwatch 2 at its core is an extremely complicated game of rock, paper, scissors, where constantly switching heroes to counter your opponent's team is a necessity. When you create an environment where people have access to more heroes just because they paid money, you disrupt that balance. To fix the cosmetic issues of the Battle Pass, I would recommend looking at a Deep Rock Galactic system where each time you level up you get a currency that you can use to purchase your way through a tree. That way, dedicated players can work towards the cosmetics they want the most.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
But if that's not an option, then adding challenges that the player can immediately do to unlock the heroes would make it a bit more fair for everyone involved. Since this is the way that you can unlock older characters, or you could also spend $10 to unlock them too, so it's like buying a battle pass but with none of the other rewards, I don't know why you can't do the same thing here. Speaking of the heroes, I saw a lot of complaints that also mentioned the hero overhauls from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2. Some of the character changes make sense. Mei lost her ability to freeze people in place with her blaster because the developers didn't like adding too much stun CC, and let's be honest, she is annoying to go against. Orisa had most of her abilities reworked to get rid of her ability to pull enemies close together and to get rid of her shield to nerf the so-called shield meta, but some of these reworks just don't make sense to me. For Bastion, they reworked his configurations so he could no longer sit as a turret for an indefinite amount of time, and he can't heal himself. I remember back in the day that the main issue with Bastion was that he was too strong at the lower ranks and too weak at the higher ranks. Torbjorn had the same issue for a while. I mean, at one point I managed to get a play of the game where my turret did all the work while I just sat there dead. If that's an issue for the developers, I feel like the best way to compensate is to have different character rules and or abilities depending on what game mode you're playing. That way you can better fine-tune how well a character operates in competitive without destroying their viability in quick play and vice versa. I also don't understand the philosophy around how Doomfist now plays. In Overwatch 1, he was a DPS who had high mobility and could sneak around to a backline to divert the enemy's attention. Now he's a tank whose entire goal is to sit there and be shot at so he can deal more damage. This just seems very counterintuitive to his character design, since instead of the fiercely strong character we got in the first game, we now have the equivalent of Homer Simpson. Instead, I would just make a new tank that has some elements of Doomfist design and keeping Doomfist as a DPS. If Doomfist can't be nerfed or buffed enough to make him viable, I would also just remove him from the game. It seems like a radical idea, but this isn't the first time Blizzard has done something like this. When Overwatch 2 was released, several features were removed for seemingly no reason. There were no medals, no endgame cards, no on-fire system, and no player levels. The game got rid of one extra player on each team, meaning that the main composition was now 1 tank, 2 DPS, and 2 healers. They also got rid of the assault mode, meaning that several maps were removed from the pool. Some of these features were added back, notably the on-fire system. Some were replaced, the assault mode was replaced by the push mode, and some are brand new like the leaderboard. Aside from the obvious solution of not taking away these mechanics, I feel like there's a couple easier alternatives Blizzard could have done. First, they could have added a way to opt out of certain game modes or maps. That way people who don't like game modes like the assault maps or the push maps don't have to play them. Even though I personally love the assault maps, I hated the Paris map, so being able to toggle that off would be a nice addition. But Blizzard could also run polls before making any of these changes in the future, gauging player interest on major changes they planned on making, such as if they wanted to prefer games to be 5v5 or 6v6. For me, I would prefer having the original 6v6 formula back. Having 5 players on a team just leads to the maps feeling emptier and the battles feeling less strategic, since having only one tank really got rid of a good amount of the tank synergies that used to exist in the game. At the same time, I can't honestly say that the change made the game worse, since it seems like the community is split 50-50 on the issue. Finally, I think the biggest complaint is how they handle PvE in Overwatch 2. I won't talk too long on this because there's already tons of videos and articles on the subject, so I'll just say this. Blizzard promised for years that the PvE would be expansive missions with tons of replayability, customization trees, and tons of additional lore to the Overwatch universe. So it's kind of appalling when the PvE is released nearly a year after the game first dropped, for $15, for 3 missions, without any of the additional features that were promised. Remember, they stopped consistent patches to Overwatch 1 for PvE, and this is what we got. There's no real way to fix this, honestly, unless you give Overwatch 2 the No Man's Sky treatment, but I really don't have any magical advice here. Companies just need to stop over-promising and under-delivering. All this being said, I'm not saying that Overwatch 2 is a bad game. There's a couple things added in Season 6 that are mostly cool. There's now individual hero progression for each character that lets you level them up by using their unique abilities in battle, except for the win section where it only counts the last hero you played for the win. There's a firing range to help you learn to aim at targets, and a new game mode called Flashpoint that, even though it just feels like a worse control, shows that they're actually trying out new things. And I also think that in terms of how the heroes look, I prefer practically all of their Overwatch 2 variants. At the end of the day though, that isn't enough. Even putting all of my personal opinions aside, the amount of broken promises and shady practices combined with the loss of content between the games means that Overwatch 2 is, in my opinion, an inferior sequel. But what do I know? Blizzard is well known for being an upstanding community with absolutely nothing wrong going on behind the scenes, so I think we should all trust their judgment. Anyway, before I leave, I just want to say one last thing. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I loved the original Overwatch, and I have hours of footage of me just playing and having fun with my friends and family. I don't want to dislike Overwatch 2, but I feel like the game's just lost most of its charm to me. And just because I don't like a game doesn't mean I want other people to hate it too. Video games are meant to be played for fun, so if you genuinely enjoy playing Overwatch 2, then that's great. I just can't bring myself to do the same. I hope to see you all again next week. Peace out.